everyone, and welcome back to the channel. So it's been a while since I've been on here, and I'm not in another country. As you can see, I'm in my own office. Various different reasons I haven't traveled that much extensively recently. One of them being this. I have just brought out my own kids book, so the description for that is going to be down below, but this is one of the reasons, getting this to publish and getting that out there and talking with my illustrator and stuff like that, as well as a few other things, is one of the main reasons I haven't been uploading, but I am going to be back to it very, very soon. I'm planning on another trip in a few days' time. I may even take a stranger. I may even just take a friend of mine just randomly and go, hey, let's go, because that's the way I like to do it. But in the meantime, I thought, you know what? What's a good thing to do? Well, I want to talk about some places I've already been. I want to let you guys into the thoughts I have behind some of these countries and what's the country that's best for each individual thing. So
one thing I am constantly asked when travelling and by people that are looking to start is, where is safest? Because it's a big thing. If people don't know, they haven't been travelling around, and they hear a lot of things on the news, in the media, of how safe a place is, or, you know, locked up abroad and all that kind of stuff that people see, people don't necessarily know or trust websites that say where's safest. So what do I think?
So yes, safety is so important for so many people, and rightfully so, I guess. Obviously, so many of us that live in specific countries don't really think about it in our day-to-day lives. You know, there's maybe an increase in some violence or something somewhere, and you suddenly feel like you're under attack. But actually, for many of us, we're in very safe countries. But if we're looking at the safest countries, personally, I can think about, then there's three that come to mind immediately. One of them is Jordan. Jordan I found incredibly safe. I've told a story to many people that I know about Jordan, in that when I was there at around midnight, I remember going out and going to a specific kind of shop that was just had amazing queues, just so long, and we were waiting for kanafa, which is a dessert that's kind of phyllo pastry and a Middle Eastern Turkish cheese with pistachios and syrup or honey on top of it, and amazingly nice. It sounds strange, but it's an incredible dessert. And after that, everyone just sitting around chatting to each other. At no point did I feel hassled, and this was in Amman. This was in the capital city of Jordan that I had this experience, and just no issues at all. You know, I was in kind of downtown Amman, and just no issues whatsoever. In the middle of the night, no one there was in any way seeming dangerous. Even when I was in the middle of the desert, I didn't feel in danger at all. And just any city I went to, any town I went to, any village, just nowhere did I feel in any danger whatsoever. Just one of the safest places I've ever been. And for different reasons than other places, but it felt like a community there. It was very much a community, and it didn't feel like I was ever going to be in any kind of problems. Next up for me, Norway. Norway has got to be one of the safest places I've ever been, for, I mean, one kind of reason is that there's just no one around half the time. And so it's a strange thing, but everyone's very kind of friendly, but in that very Northern European way. So kind of friendly enough to then go, right, I've got to go, you know. But there's no suggestion of any kind of just crime, full stop, just no crime. And so when you don't think there's any crime, you don't even think that there's a possibility of it being anything but safe. I mean, Northern Europe obviously is very well known for being incredibly safe anyway, and so that's not exactly surprising. But I remember, especially when I was in Oslo, which is obviously the capital of Norway, I remember being there at about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I saw 3 other people in the capital city. 3 other people at 2 o'clock in the morning. If I did that in London, the streets would be full. If I did that in New York, the streets would be full. If I did that anywhere, there would be people there. And the fact there's no one there, it's just kind of, it just doesn't feel like anything's going to happen there in any way. And so I think that's definitely one of the big ones there. And then final for me, I'm actually going to specifically state a city. Now the reason is because I've not been to any other places in this country, and most people treat this city as if it's a country anyway, and that's Dubai, which obviously is in the United Arab Emirates. But Dubai specifically, I found incredibly safe. Again, for another different reason, it just felt like the people there were never going to let anything happen. It was very much the case that we will deal with any situations. Nothing is ever going to be an issue. You are here within our city. We will look after you. And it just seemed very efficient, very much the case that they took pride in the fact that they were seen as safe. They took pride in the fact that people wanted to visit there. And that was kind of part of it. And that's why it's one of the safest places I think you could go to. If I was to choose one, I'm unsure, because again, they're all safe for different reasons. Jordan, because there's a family feel. Norway, because there's just no crime in any way and no one there. And Dubai specifically because people are specifically being efficient in making sure that things don't happen. So personally, it would probably be Norway if I was to choose of what would be the safest, purely because I never felt like there was any kind of crime that could ever happen. And so when that idea is taken, then it kind of tops the list for me.
Okay, but where's the best weather? I don't want it to be raining or just windy all the time. So where's the best place for the best weather?
Now, obviously, if you want good weather, there's a few different places. Now, I've just mentioned. I'm just going to mention three different places from three different continents here. Now, there's other places. Either I've not been to them, or I just don't think that their weather is up to scratch. You never know. But I would say Jordan has to be on there. Jordan, when I was there, last time I was in Jordan, it was February and it was 32 degrees by the Dead Sea. 32 degrees Celsius, by the way, anyone in the US, which I think is around 100 Fahrenheit in February. Or 100 plus. And just think I mean, the weather's fantastic. It's also not a wet heat, so a lot of people, especially in the UK, will always talk about dry and damp heats. Now, Jordan does have the advantage of not having a damp heat. There's not a lot of humidity there. It's a dry heat. So, of course, if you don't like dry heat, then Jordan's not for you. It can, obviously, for some people, cause some issues with their eyes and stuff like that. But personally, for me, it's actually the heat that I survive in the best. Then in Europe, if we move back into my kind of home ground, Italy. Italy, I think, has the best weather by far of any European country that I've been to. I think I've only ever known it to barely rain once when I've been in Italy, and I've been to Italy several times across the country. Many people still think that the UK is horrible weather. It's not. It's just that we talk about it a lot and we convince ourselves. If you actually look, I think Portugal actually rains more than the UK does yearly. But if you're looking at somewhere that's got great weather, it's going to be Italy. Now, again, when you're going to Italy, I would not go during the summer. I know for a lot of people that's just when you have to go because of work or whatever it is, but Italy can get incredibly stuffy and stifling, and it can be very, very, very humid. It can get up to 40 plus degrees in the summer, or plus, so like 42, 44 degrees, and can be incredibly humid to the point where some locals will actually just stay away from the streets and at home. Now, Italy does have AC in a lot of places, but not everywhere does as well. So that can be an interesting one. And then to finish off our list on weather, we have Morocco. And I think it's very similar in how I would describe it as Jordan. Probably, I think it gets the hottest of these three, which isn't for everyone. And again, it's a dry heat, similar to Jordan. So if you're not a fan of dry heat, if you prefer the humidity, you would want to avoid Morocco. But the one thing I did find with Morocco is it is a comfortable heat, at least for myself, as someone that comes from the UK. I found it comfortable, even though it's probably the hottest. It was a comfortable heat. It didn't feel like I was constantly having to catch my breath, as it can do sometimes when you're in a humid place. So I think of those three, it's hard to pick a kind of a definite one for you there. It all depends on what you prefer, what you are comfortable in. If you're someone that actually humidity is something you need, that's where you're comfortable, it's going to be Italy. If it's you prefer drier heats, then you've got Jordan or Morocco. And if you're someone that really wants that kind of scorching heat, then you'll go for Morocco. It really does depend on what you're looking for there.
But what about cost? I need to save up to travel, don't I? I can't just go off all the time and find little things. It's going to cost so much. Well, actually, there's a lot of countries that are really affordable. These would be my top picks.
Obviously, cheap is a big thing for so many people. Now, I have done a video, of course, on what is the cheapest ways to travel, how to get these cheap tickets. But if we're looking at cheap in general, there's three main places that come to mind. Now, these may not even be the cheapest places I've been to. I think there's probably cheaper places quite possibly that I've been to, almost definitely. However, these are the ones that come to mind, and that's the most important thing. So for me, cheapest have got to be, one of the ones is Hungary. Hungary is incredibly cheap. Now, I remember looking up when I was first in Hungary, within about 3 days of being there, I started looking at how much it would be to rent an apartment there, and realised it would cost next to nothing for me to rent an apartment. And a haircut there is probably the only thing that is the same as it would be in England. But food there, so cheap, even when you're going premium. Drinks there are, I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's just, you can get a pint there for 79p. So if you like a drink, you know, like I do occasionally, you are going to be very happy in Hungary. In fact, I found my favourite alcoholic drink. It was a cherry beer. I found it in a bar in Budapest, which is quite funny because it was an Austrian beer, but I'd never found it in Austria, only in Hungary. But again, that one, even for that, was like £1, the equivalent of £1. So things like that. So having a good night out is cheap. Eating is cheap. Cost of living in general is cheap. So Hungary, very much if you're looking at somewhere that maybe you want to move to, that comes very, very high. Next up, Bulgaria. Not very far away, of course, from Hungary, but Bulgaria is incredibly cheap. Now, for this, I'm going to even include the cost of housing to buy. I did at one point actually consider buying property in Bulgaria, because of how ridiculously cheap it was. Now, of course, you can pay the same amount of prices as you would do anywhere else for specific property, but there were ones out there that were just so cheap that it would take less than a month's average wage in the UK to buy a house in the mountains. Just absolutely astounding, the price in Bulgaria for so many things. Now, I have to say that Bulgaria is getting a lot more bougie in certain places, but step out of the major centres there and go into the mountains, beautiful mountains in Bulgaria, and you'll find actually I can get that other stuff for cheap as well. They're very much into their coffee now, so don't expect to be going there and getting a cheap Starbucks. They're a lot more expensive. But for housing, to buy, for general food, very, very good prices in Bulgaria. If you're going on a budget, you're going to enjoy that, especially if you're someone that enjoys trekking and really wants to learn kind of culture of somewhere. Bulgaria is going to be a good choice for you. And then finally, I'm going to mention it again, and I know I mention it a lot, but it's one of my favorite places is Jordan. Jordan does hit the list for cheap. I've talked about this before, that I when I went out there and I was buying the equivalent of a Subway sandwich, basically from street vendors, uh, it was the it was the equivalent of 65 pence. It was less than a pound for a large sub, and then you'd go opposite and go into an old amphitheatre and just eat your lunch. I was paying £50 a day to have a taxi driver drive me round basically every major uh, place to see. When I was in Amman, I went and saw Moses' mound. I went to the Dead Sea, went for hours, and it was £50 for hours, and he effectively became my tour guide. It was just so cheap to just go, hey, you know what? What do you want? And you can just take me around. You're like, you're a local here, and he was actually from Kuwait originally, but had moved to Jordan. And he was just absolutely fantastic, and just the equivalent. I think a taxi just to, to get 20 minutes down the road in the UK would be 50. So to get it for several hours and to get all over the place was incredible. I was paying £18 a night for a suite in the capital. And obviously when I stayed with a Bedouin as well in the desert, I was paying basically nothing. It was just incredibly cheap all round. Very much the case that if you're looking for somewhere that's going to be a lovely getaway, I'd recommend Jordan. Now, obviously, if you're going to go to somewhere like Petra, those prices suddenly became a lot more expensive because Petra is one of the seven wonders, so it can go up a bit. But definitely for pricing, I'd say Jordan's on there. Now, if I was going to pick somewhere overall, I'd say if you're looking to potentially move and to live outside of your country, then Hungary, because the general cost of living is just so low for everything. And this is more if you're a digital nomad and you have the money kind of that you would do in your own country going there. And then for visits and things like that would be Jordan. So I think those would be the good choices there.
One thing I care about as well is culture and history. It's always interesting to look around. So what has the best culture? Well, there's quite a few places, but my top picks are definitely these.
I've got a few choices for you again now, and this is where we bring in Lithuania. Now, for some people that have been with the channel for a while, you might wonder, how is this only the first time you're mentioning Lithuania? Lithuania is somewhere you love. Like, you've talked about it before. It's your favorite, and it is. It's my favorite capital city in the world, is Vilnius in Lithuania. I absolutely love Lithuania. But there's different reasons to like a place, and that's why I've got these different things here, because I think it's important to get different reasons in, not just a feeling, which can be so much the case that it's just a feeling that you like somewhere. So Lithuania is a fantastic place. It's absolutely lovely. The architecture is fantastic. The general history of the country as well. And it's an amazing mix of old and new world. It's an amazing mix of Eastern and Northern European ideas. And culturally, it still has parts of all of its history still in it somehow. It has such a fantastic integration that you can understand times when it was part Soviet. You can understand how it's moved more towards the Northern Europe. And you can see that, and they openly show it. You've got the museums there, you've got the architecture still there, and there's open things everywhere. You've even got, if you're going to Vilnius, then just off from Vilnius, or technically in Vilnius, you've got Uzupis, which is technically an independent country within its own right, kind of. But the kind of cultural idea of that place is a fantastic thing to discover as well, and Lithuania really does have that as a massive tick by it. Then we have Czechia, or Czech Republic, and obviously before that Czechoslovakia. It's outstanding. It's outstanding to go into so many different things when you're there across the country. It just has a wealth of older buildings. It has a wealth of history to the country, and because similar to Lithuania, it's been through so many different changes. It's an interesting country to be in, because they embrace their history in a similar way that Lithuania does. They embrace it, they understand it, they don't look to destroy it, they don't look for everything to be new and everything to be shiny. As you will find in many countries, especially if you move further into kind of very much Eastern Asia, there's a move to kind of move away from that sometimes even. But in Czechia, there's definitely an interaction with it, and there's so many castles. There's so many older buildings that are hundreds of years old, especially if you're coming from a country, maybe if you're coming from America or something like that, that's far more a kind of new world ideal. This will be something that just amazes you because it is. There are buildings there that are several hundred years older than your entire country, and I think that can be so inviting as an idea for so many different people. Then we once again find ourselves with Jordan. You can't avoid it. It's Jordan has Petra, and I think if you grew up in any way watching Indiana Jones, you've seen Petra. It is an ancient city, an ancient Roman city that has bits of Rome as well as bits of ancient Jordanian culture there as well. It has the mix. It has a just a, it's something it's hard to describe, but I will say that I walked with a relative good pace, and it took me 8 hours to walk through that ancient city. I was not necessarily taking my time to take everything in. There is so much to see there. There's so much to see. There's so much to interact with, and that's just Petra. That's just Petra. Without the rest of the country, just Petra gives you that. And then you move into when I stayed with the Bedouin and talking about their cultural significance to the country and how they have lived for hundreds plus years. Then you talk to somebody about Moses Mounds and the cultural significance behind this, where people literally do pilgrimages from across the world to come to Moses Mound and come to that place. There is so much in Jordan from so many different backgrounds brought together in that one country that it's hard to ever leave it off of a list of cultural significance, and it's fantastic to see. And then we have Morocco. Morocco is again just a culture shock, I feel, for many people. It has some similarities to much of the Middle East, but not hugely. Going into a souk in Morocco is something that it's hard to describe. A souk, for anyone that's wondering, is basically a marketplace, but it's so vibrant. It's so full of life as a thing. It's its own entity when you're stepping into kind of a marketplace within Morocco, and that's just one part of it. But just to understand and just to see that is outstanding, and how people interact is an amazing thing to see. And then, of course, beyond that, you have these incredible buildings and ancient world that you never could even conceive of in your own country. And I'm talking as someone that's from the UK, an incredibly old country in its own right, but you step into Morocco and you step into the past in many ways. That's not to say that the country itself is in the past, but there's so much of its heritage that's still there, that's still shown, that you can understand that it was there in the times that are far gone, that we still see only in films. You realize, yes, this stood here, and it's something, it's very hard to describe, but so wonderful. I think if we're talking in terms of culture, I think you have to look at somewhere like either Morocco or Jordan, just purely because of their history. And obviously that's not as easy for some people, because obviously Africa and Asia there, Middle East, but it's more of a journey for many people. But I would absolutely suggest it for so many people to take that leap and just to look into the eyes of the past through both of those countries are outstanding ways of looking at a cultural significance of a country, to look at the history and heritage of a country, and to understand the people of that country and how they've interacted and how they still interact, is something that I think is so important. And the fact that there's a culture shock, I think, makes it even more culturally significant as well.
Okay, but where's the best food? That's what I want. When I'm travelling abroad, I like to be able to eat well. Well, these are the best options, I'd say.
Now, I've got quite an eclectic list here for you, because I enjoy a lot of different types of food. So I've got four choices for you here, and I don't know. I think I've got an interesting list here personally. And there are actually a lot of foods that I would still put on it. I mean, I'd give pretty much everywhere in the Middle East a go if you're eating. I've got no Middle Eastern countries on this list, but I think if you just try Middle Eastern food, it should get a special mention, because just everywhere that I've been out there has incredible food, especially breakfasts. I adore breakfast. The simplicity of a breakfast in the Middle East is just absolutely fantastic, and I would absolutely just suggest you do that. But the ones that I've gone for that I think will be the best across the board for most people, are as follows. Now, obviously, the big one that I just couldn't avoid is Italy. How can you not mention Italy when you mention food? I mean, two of the most popular foods in the world, full stop, are Italian: pasta and pizza. Probably the most popular, being pizza, is Italian. I mean, it's hard to say, it's hard to leave off a country that has basically the world's most popular food. Um, and trust me, there is a huge difference. There's a reason that the best pizza in the world is won every year by Italy. Um, I know New York are going to try and claim it, but it's never happening, guys. I think you probably have a couple in the top 10, but Italy's winning every time. And, you know, that's just mentioning one type of food that they have: pizza. That just on that, they've got to be on the list. But then just local delicacies over there, the freshness of the food. Oh, just simple salads over there become gourmet meals, and the way that they like to interact with their food, and they have it as a family thing. The whole experience in Italy for food cannot be overstated as to how good it is. Next up, I've got to put Hungary in there. I know it's a weird one for many people, but I think this is because I have some Northern English heritage. My father's from Northern England, and there's a big thing about stews in the north of England. And so I grew up with a comfort food of stew. And so for me, Hungary is very much a comfort food for me. They have a lot of stews. They have that kind of traditional thing, and I find Hungarian food very very comforting to me. It feels right. I feel like, oh yes, I'll have this, and I'll go and have a day of work, or if I'm just down and I just want to feel um, like I'm, you know, it's a rainy day or something. You just want to have a good meal. Having Hungarian food is always good. I mean, so many people have heard of goulash because it is, you know, a very well-known dish, and it is one of those long and slow stews. It's a fantastic thing there, and I would definitely recommend, if you are wanting to have some comfort food, if that's that kind of comfort food for you. Now, I understand it's not for everyone, but Hungary is definitely going to be on the list. Next up is Montenegro. Now, Montenegro, which I've not mentioned anywhere else on my kind of list for these, I think Montenegro has to be in here. It's exceptional on so many things. Now, Borek is one of them. Now, yes, if there's anyone from other countries, Borek is in so many people around that region's dishes. A lot of countries kind of have Borek, from places like Turkey as well have this. But I found it the best. I'm sorry. This was just an individual place. There might be better ones. I don't know. But I found it the best when I was last in Montenegro. And actually, I only found it in one place in Montenegro. I only found it in Podgorica. Now, I say that, I think I saw places selling it, but I only bought it in Podgorica. And that alone is outstanding. Very, very simple food, but just, Oh, just so amazing. Basically, it is a filled, rolled, swirled pastry, and it's just amazing. It's so good. But they also do incredible drinks of every kind. And I have to say, the best hot chocolate, and I know this is a random one, I don't care. The best hot chocolate I've ever had in my life, from all of the countries I've ever been to, from all of the parts of the UK, from every type of way I've tried to make it, the best hot chocolate in the world, and I'm sorry to Switzerland, you have great ones. I'm sorry to Belgium, you have great ones. But it's Montenegro. Montenegro have the best hot chocolate, followed very closely actually by Italy. Italy do have a very good hot chocolate as well, the thick hot chocolate, almost like a custard. But anyway, Montenegro have an incredible hot chocolate. They also do coffee incredibly well. So they come onto the list for having very good local delicacy, but also they're fantastic on drinks and everything else. And if you're thinking of food, then you've got to think of the whole thing. And then finally, Morocco. Morocco has just very flavorful, probably the most flavorful food. It is a type of food that you feel that you're not going to weigh yourself down. If you're in Italy, if you're in Montenegro, if you're in Hungary, if you're in many other places, you can have a fantastic meal that just tastes amazing, and then think, oh my god, I wish I wore some different trousers, some stretchy pants, kind of thing. But in Morocco, you don't feel that. It just feels, you can feel like you've eaten so much and it's so amazing, and the taste and the flavors are so fantastic. And yet you don't feel like you're going to suddenly have to slump and fall asleep for the rest of the day. You actually still feel full of life and you still feel amazing. And to be honest, you'll keep probably trying a lot of different food. You'll keep going. But yes, it has a similar feel to me than much of the Middle East, but not quite. But far more kind of tapasy feel. Now, it isn't tapas, it is not that, but it does have that feel where it's you're having an experience of a lot of different foods and bring it together for yourself, rather than the heavy weighted down of somebody else's attempt at feeding you. And I think that's important. If I was to give one overall, oh, it's a very hard one. I think logically, you've got to say Italy, because it is everyone's favorite food kind of comes from Italy. But for a place in my heart, I'd have to, for me, say Hungary, purely because it's my comfort food in Hungary, and that holds my heart there. I have to say that for me personally. So there you go, just a few different things that you might be thinking about. I've been asked so many times of where has the best food and things like that. Now, as I've said, there are so many places that I've been, I can't mention them all. I wanted to keep mentioning so many of some of the countries I'd already mentioned, but I didn't want the list to be so long, because there are so many other places that are friendly. There are so many other places that are cheap. There's so many other places that are safe, that are culturally significant, that have incredible weather and that have incredible food. But I would end up mentioning almost everywhere I've been, and I didn't want to make it that long. It's already one of my, if not the longest video I have anyway. And I just wanted to highlight a few places, because I get asked it all the time, and I just wanted you to see it. Now, I'm going to start uploading a lot more as we go forward. Hopefully every couple of weeks you're going to see a new video of me in a new country, or I might start also having a look around my own country, as I did with the Brighton video. But I hope to be back out. I like being on those flights and discovering new things, or going over old grounds that maybe I haven't shared with you, but I've enjoyed in the past as well. So I hope you've taken something out of that, and maybe I've opened your eyes to some food that you didn't know, or a country didn't know had good food, like Montenegro. Maybe I've mentioned somewhere that had cultural significance or heritage you hadn't thought of, like Czechia or Lithuania. I hope to do that, and that's kind of why I do this channel, is to show you places that you might want to visit that you hadn't thought of before, or just open up some things that you'd never thought of. So I hope you've enjoyed that, and I hope you'll join me next time. And of course, if you have the chance and you would like to purchase my book, my kids' book, for Christmas or for a birthday, I'll have it in the description below. And thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.